poll coverage from tomorrow, you might be in for a surprise. I don't know. I haven't seen the numbers, but who knows? Let's tune in tomorrow, viewers, from 6 onwards for that opinion poll. 21 states, 518 constituencies. It's the biggest opinion poll. The Right Stand with Anand Narasimhan.
Namaste, Jai Hind, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us on this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narasimhan. Are we as Bharat the most vibrant democracy across the world, where people enjoy unabated freedom to a level perhaps not witnessed in any other nation across the world? Or are we an elected autocracy? That means we have elections, yes, but our systems are gradually becoming more and more autocratic, and perhaps we should rank with the likes of Pakistan and Bangladesh. A Sweden-based outfit called VDEM, Varieties of Democracy, the VDEM Institute, founded by Stefan I. Lindberg in 2014, that studies the qualities of various governments, has the following to say about Bharat in its latest report. And this is a continuing series. They said this in 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, and now even in 2024. India is ranked 104 on the Liberal Democracy Index. They have a quadrant, and in that, India is among the worst autocracies in recent years. That's what they say. Sedition, defamation, counter-terrorism is being used to silence critics. Political opponents and government critics face intimidation. Silencing of dissent in academia is currently prevalent. Government continues to suppress freedom of religious rights. They do this to more than 202 entities across the world, ladies and gentlemen. And they have come out to say that Bharat right now is in the same grouping as nations like Pakistan and Bangladesh. Do you agree, disagree? Is this who we are? Or should entities, outfits like VDEM, who have been called as the most important provider of quantitative democracy data for scholarly research by political scientists like Daniel Hegedus, should they be called out for their perhaps biased and unscientific reporting of Bharat or presentation portrayal of Bharat? Let's go straight across to our guest. There are more data points to share. We'll do that through the course of the conversation. Professor Salvatore Babones, academician and sociologist, joins us. Lavanya Vemsani ji, author, joining us at this point. Sanju Verma, national spokesperson of the BJP, with us. And Sanjay Jha, author and also one who's perennially been questioning the functioning of the government under the aegis leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, a Congress leader himself, joining us at this point. Namaste. Thank you very, very much to everybody. Professor Salvatore Babones, you have done a paper about these outfits, calling out the likes of Freedom House and VDEM. How much of credence should one give to this report? And is Bharat truly an elected autocracy and one of the worst autocracies in the last decade?
I don't think we can take evaluations like that from the Varieties of Democracy Institute very seriously. Now, I can't tell you what the quality of Indian democracy is, but neither can VDEM. I mean, just to put their statistics into perspective, according to VDEM, India has far worse quality of democracy than Nepal. India is rated 110th in the world. Nepal is rated 55th. Maldives at 70, Sri Lanka at 75, despite having just gone through an irregular transition in government. Indonesia, which recently declared Islamic law and elected a suspected mass killer as its president, is rated 80th, while India is down at 110. Now, good news for India, at least it's above Pakistan at 118. Okay, so I don't think we can take these evaluations very seriously, because ultimately these evaluations are based on the subjective judgments of people living in the countries themselves. And while Indians may feel, that is, Indian intellectuals may feel that Indian democracy is suffering severe challenges, Well, what does it take to be a member of the intelligentsia in Maldives? The Maldives intelligentsia rates Maldives relatively well. Maybe that's not so surprising given the relatively restrictive nature of Maldives society.
So would you give credence to this? And why is it that they would bunch India with the likes of Pakistan and Bangladesh, Professor Babones?
First of all, I always emphasize it's not VDEM rating India, it's Indians rating India. VDEM uses a methodology that primarily surveys people in the country themselves. So political scientists, journalists, writers, other intellectuals in the country being studied. There are international experts involved, but they make up the minority of the VDEM panel. So it's not that VDEM from Sweden is taking a negative view of Indian democracy, it's that the Indians who report to VDEM take a very negative view of Indian democracy. And if I can give you just one last statistic to put it into context, VDEM now rates Indian democracy lower than at any time during the 1976-78 1975-77 emergency. So elections in India today are rated as of lower quality than the 1977 election, at the time of which 10,000 or more political figures were still in prison, the press was still being repressed, the emergency wasn't ended until the day after the election. I find it incredible to think that Indian democracy today is in worse shape than it was under Indira Gandhi's emergency. That's my own qualitative judgment, but really this is something for Indians to work out for themselves.
11 states ruled either by the opposition India bloc or neutral parties in Bharat. No single party won over 38% votes. The BJP got 37.7% in 2019. At the same time, the Congress got about 20% votes. So that's the situation. 61 crore people out of 90 crore plus enrollments in 2019, they came out and voted. But we are an electoral autocracy, Sanjay Jhaji?
Anand, we are a democratically elected dictatorship. Let me disagree with the former panelist who spoke on the emergency. The emergency was a formal declaration of a suspension of civil liberties done as per the provisions of the Constitution, and they lasted a period of 21 months. Under Mr. Modi, since 2014, we have had an undeclared emergency, stealthy, which is what is called as an elected autocracy, an illiberal democracy. The gentleman needs to be aware of what is happening in India today. Anand, you are aware that in the mayoral election in Chandigarh, there was an open fraud being done on camera by the presiding officer who was changing the votes to make a BJP candidate win. That is a sign of a democracy in decline. It's a democratic recession, or worse, a democratic depression. Look at the verdict of the Supreme Court today. The Supreme Court has said that electoral bonds, which is, by the way, a source of political corruption, a very opaque form of funding, and anybody on your panel should be knowing that if your campaign finance is tainted or corrupted, a democracy is in danger, because it means there is crony capitalism flourishing, it means there is plutocracy, it means probably the government is actually working in cahoots with big business. That makes for a very unhealthy democracy. And look at the way this government, Anand, tried to subvert the disclosure of that information through the leading Bank of India, and the Supreme Court has almost held the State Bank of India for contempt for denying that information or disclosure. Point number 3, this government has amended the process of electing the Chief Election Commissioner by removing the Chief Justice of India and actually putting the executive in the selection of the election commissioner. Can you imagine the world's largest democracy going through elections where the election commission, which is supposed to be an independent constitutional body, is infiltrated with nominees of the government? I have given you 3 instances of a blatant disrespect for democratic norms. Point number 4, you know what, at the end of the day, if you read the VDEM report, I have been reading them consistently, look at the way the opposition is being wiped out in this country. The harassment done through the agencies like ED, CBI, and income tax, opposition leaders in jail, media freedom being curtailed, a lot of people actually in the Right to Information Act being diluted, people actually having the fear of a defamation suit, a police investigation, or an FIR if they were going to be critical of this government. So in short, India is not the mother of democracy. It is seeing a murder of democracy in broad daylight.
Well, I have not had the Congress party come to my show for the last 6 years and they are in opposition. Wonder what will happen if they were to come to government. But Sanju Verma, please respond.
Thank you. Anand, Hindi में कहावत है हाथी के दांत खाने के और दिखाने के और. And when a suspended Congress leader on your show waxes eloquent about how democracy has come undone under the aegis of Prime Minister Modi, it is laughable. And I'll tell you why. And I will give you a pointed rebuttal. First and foremost, almost 23 crore, 230 million people voted for the BJP en masse in the 2019 general elections. For you to sit here and say that, what we are witnessing is a closed autocracy or an electoral autocracy, which is what Sweden would have you believe, is absolutely, a bunch of falsehoods. If ever democracy came undone in India, it was when Jawaharlal Nehru in 1951 passed the first amendment to the constitution curtailing free speech. Then it was in 1976 that Indira Gandhi passed the 42nd amendment curtailing the power of judicial review by the high courts. Then you had Rajiv Gandhi, who tried to bring the anti-defamation law in 1988. Thank God it did not pass through both houses of parliament and failed to become a law. I will not even go so far as saying that the worst and the most devious chapter in India's post-independent history is 1975, when Indira Gandhi rode roughshod over a court judgment to pronounce emergency. To this charge that, opposition leaders are being jailed by the Enforcement Directorate and the CBI, let me say this. If hypothetically I have to believe that the Enforcement Directorate and the CBI are handmaidens of the government, pray tell me, why is it that the Supreme Court, which is impartial, which is not biased, the highest apex court, the highest judicial body in India, has repeatedly denied bail to a Sanjay Singh of the Aam Aadmi Party, to a Satyendra Jain of the Aam Aadmi Party, to a Manish Sisodia of the Aam Aadmi Party? This is the same Supreme Court which Sanjay Jha just cited a couple of minutes back, which while staying Rahul Gandhi's conviction in the criminal defamation case where he's called all Modis as thieves, the Supreme Court, what did it say? I will read ad verbatim in 20 seconds what the Supreme Court said about Rahul Gandhi and castigated him in no uncertain terms. The Supreme Court said, a man of Rahul Gandhi's standing who's been in public life for so long should choose his words with more care, more discretion, and he should not give in to these outbursts of emotions, which is what Rahul Gandhi does so frequently, showcasing why many people still refer to him as Pappu. Now, the most important argument is this: we them, as Professor Dabonis said, we them, we all know, you just have to Google, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to know this. We them is funded by the George Soros and the Pierre Omidyar network. George Soros has no love lost for the Modi dispensation, and there have been ample proofs of that in the recent past. What I find hilarious is that we them, recently, about 1.5 to 2 years back, it had ranked India lower than Sri Lanka in the World Happiness Index. And within months of that, Sri Lanka went bankrupt with people, the civilians, actually raiding the presidential palace in Sri Lanka. India had to send food, water, medical supplies to Sri Lanka for its very survival. Which country does we them say is the happiest country in the world? It says Finland is the happiest country in the world. And which country has the highest suicide rate in the world? It is Finland, which has the highest suicide rate in the world. Then let us talk about, some other findings by Vedem. Vedem says that, United States is a great democracy. I'll give you some data. This data says that 14% of the American population is black. But do you know what percentage of America's population is in prison or in the lockup? 47%. It says for every 100,000 people in America, 901 people are languishing in prison even without a trial. Then the second biggest non-white minority in the US is Hispanics. Hispanics form 19% of American population, and the incarceration rate for Hispanics is 434 for every 100,000, whereas for the white population in America, the incarceration rate is just 181 people for every 100,000. Now you compare that with, in 30 seconds I will end my argument. You compare that with what is happening in India. Muslims form about 14 to 15% of India's population in a country of 1.4 billion, 140 crore people. Now what I find very surprising is that though Muslims account for only 14% of India's population, I have given this data on your show, Anand, a zillion times, and I would like to reinforce it. It needs to be said. 31% of Prime Minister's Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, the allocation is to minorities, particularly Muslims. 33% of PM Ayushman Bharat Yojana, the allocation is to minorities, especially Muslims. 36% of Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, the allocation is for minorities, particularly Muslims. And 37% of the world's largest self-employment scheme called Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, 37% of the allocation is for minorities, particularly Muslims. And in the last 10 years of the Modi dispensation,
right.
10 crore, which is 100 million. 10 crore people have been given access to higher education and scholarships from the minority community. And you sit here and give a lecture to the Modi government that minorities are being dehumanized. There is no freedom of expression.
You're quoting data, but Lavanya Vemsaniji, the VDEM report has no statistics or data given on serious claims like curtailment of freedom of expression, compromised media independence, harassment of journalists and opposition intimidation. A lot of things have been said. You know, Bharat has been equated to El Salvador in page 16. On page 16, on what basis? What is the number? Alleged censorship. India's alleged censorship is compared with El Salvador without giving any data again in page 16.
Right.
So how can scholarly work be given without any data?
Yeah.
And
that is exactly where the actual problem is. We don't know where the survey is conducted. We don't know what the exact data is. And they say each country has 5 expert judges. So who are these 5 expert judges that make judgments on data what is collected? And the data, as it shows, is slanted because the way it is collected. Probably it is collected from intellectuals and educated population within India, which has different view from the rural folks and what is happening in the villages. So the way the data might have been collected might have contributed to a slanted view of India. And one more point is that the people who are disgruntled have more incentive to speak about it rather than the people who are satisfied with it. So the data collection itself probably was deriving the disgruntled population.
But the method of data collection is also not mentioned. Where they have collected the sample, what is the sample size is not mentioned. They are just saying that they are looking at indicators and indices.
Right. We don't know how they are looking. And we don't know who are filling this survey. And we don't know which media houses are using what survey. And we don't know exactly how many respondents answered. And we don't know the rural background, urban background, or what is it. And we don't know how these 5 judges sit and decide a country of 1.4 billion as autocracy. How is it an autocracy when people have freedom to express? The point itself shows that, the more people contributed to this survey and answered in a disgruntled way, in a slanted way, but answer itself shows that there is freedom of expression. If there is no freedom of expression, it will be like Maldives or some other country where the survey would come out differently. The survey would be more positive because more people are not speaking. If they are speaking, of course, it is going to be like this. which is an expression of freedom itself.
No, but
and also, how can five
but the
people
report says Kosovo and Nepal are ranked higher. Kosovo, which is independent in 2008, Nepal republic since 2008, 13 prime ministerial tenures in 16 years, but it's very democratic and very independent. Civil war, ethnic conflict, insurgency, internal disturbances. Nations like Sri Lanka, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, Kenya, Ethiopia, South Africa, Tunisia and Botswana. They all rank higher than Bharat.
This is Nigeria is higher, Niger is higher, and Sri Lanka is higher, and Sweden is always on top. It's in one or two.
The Kingdom of Sweden, please. The Kingdom of Sweden, the Kingdom of Belgium, the Kingdom of Denmark, the Kingdom of Norway, and the United Kingdom, Kingdom of Bhutan. They are best democracies. They are the best democracies. Professor Babonis.
Lavanya, it's great to see you. And like Lavanya, look, I'm here to talk about the measurement of democracy, not to score political points. I think neither Lavanya and I are both academics. BJP, Congress, it's not our fight, right? That's your fight, and it's one you should have in a democracy. Look, like Sanjay said, electoral bonds are fundamentally not a democratic way to bring in campaign contributions. However, as a comparative social scientist, I look at India's electoral bonds. They're just as clean as Australia's registered associations. In Australia, anyone can give unlimited amounts to a political party. The way it works is you give it to a non-for-profit organization. That not-for-profit organization gives it to the party. They declare it. ABC Company gave $10 million to a party. Who gave it to ABC Company? Nobody knows. Now, that's not a good way to do democracy, but that's the way it's done in Australia, in India, in the United States, in many ways in the United Kingdom. Similarly, the Electoral Commission being political appointees. Well, again, that's done in the United States. Now, I don't think it's very good. I don't approve of it. But when I try to rank things comparatively, I ask, what do other democracies do? And if other recognized democracies do it, it's not so much a problem for India. Now, counter Sanja, Soros funding for the VDEM Institute is irrelevant. It's a tiny amount of funding to fund a conference. VDEM is fundamentally founded by the European Research Council. VDEM is not an evil organization that's attempting to subvert Indian democracy because someone's paying it to do so. VDEM is merely reflecting the views of India's own intellectuals when they're asked to rate Indian democracy. These are the solid facts from an academic perspective. The issue here, and I wish both people on the BJP side and the Congress side would realize, this is not an evaluation of the BJP's performance in office. VDEM is an evaluation of the Indian system. And I would encourage all Indians to come together to realize that evaluation is fundamentally out of kilter with the reality of India, at least as I've experienced it over the last 4 years of research.
So they say 4,200 scholars for 202 countries. That's on an average about 21 country experts who are judging the country.
Yeah.
So who are these 21? Who are these 21 country experts who are judging Bharat? Now here the criticism going Sanju Verma's way or the BJP ruling disposition's way is that in the last 10 years, if you have not been able to even figure out these 21 intellectuals who are going ahead and rating Bharat with some entity like VDEM, then something needs to be, then there's some serious correction that is required.
The very eloquent and the very well-read Mr. S. Jaishankar was asked about the VDEM report. He said VDEM talks about democracy and electoral autocracy in the same breath, and that is nothing short of hypocrisy. So point number one, I don't take the VDEM report seriously, but since you're having a discussion, I chose to be on your panel and I'm glad that I'm a part of it. You know, I completely disagree with Professor Babonis. You know, he may have his compulsions as an academician, what have you, to sit here and say, oh, the VDEM report is not an indictment of Narendra Modi or the BJP necessarily. The VDEM report is only a textual description of what is happening in India. Excuse me, for second time in a row in 2019, Narendra Modi came back with more than a 2/3 majority, which means that a large part of India's population believes that what Modi is doing, beat his welfare politics, beat the structural reforms that he's carrying out, or for that matter, what VDEM has chosen to ignore, right from the United Nations chief Antonio Guterres to a Bill Gates to the World Economic Forum chairman Klaus Schwab. They've all said that the world's largest and fastest vaccination drive at the height of the COVID pandemic. Thanks to Narendra Modi, thanks to India, the world healed much faster. So for us to sit here and take lectures from 21 intellectuals or 5 intellectuals is not par for the course. And when Professor Babonas said that, electoral bonds, we need to have transparency, this is the same Supreme Court, when the idea of electoral bonds was first mooted in 2018, the same Supreme Court said that without disclosing names, if instead of taking donations by cash, which is what used to happen for 65, 70 long years, if now donations are going to be taken by check, that is a welcome move, and sometimes anonymity is required so that the corporates who fund a particular party, they are not demonized by a given dispensation. So there is nothing wrong in having anonymity when it comes to making donations under electoral bonds. Now the Supreme Court may have introspected and thought
Right,
differently.
Sanjuji, please.
But let me finish.
Please yield.
But for anybody from outside India to sit here and give
No,
certificates
see,
on integrity
okay,
and democracy
Sanjuji,
to Narendra Modi is absolutely not
Sanjuji,
done,
here,
even
he
if
did.
it is of Mr.
Sanjuji,
Babonas.
please yield.
Anand, my simple point. 95% of the opposition leaders have been harassed over the last 10 years on charges, many of them fabricated. You had a court actually saying in the Sanjay Raut case, there was no case against him, and the ED went and arrested him and put him in jail. Number two, look at the reality. Even Russia has elections. Even North Korea has elections. It is not holding of a democratic election that determines your democracy's health. It's what happens in between. And therefore, the fundamental point, you look at the almost single-sided annihilation of civil liberties in India. I'll give you an example. Today, if you look at think tanks, whether it's an Amnesty International, whether it's a Center of Policy Research, they are harassed day in and day out. There are, I think one of Lavanya talked about who are these intellectuals. I have a problem with that statement. This is the problem with all the people who belong to the right-wing ecosystem. They actually are anti-intellectual in nature. So if there is an intellectual who questions the government, if there's an intellectual who differs with this government, they will target the intellectual as somebody who's got a very devious ulterior agenda. That is the problem.
Here the problem is, sir, that anybody who does not question the government is not deemed an intellectual. So that problem is with the left liberal, is with the left liberal ecosystem or the Soros-driven ecosystem, which deems that anybody who does not question a person who is functioning and who they have decided is a villain, then that person is also a villain and will cancel that person out also. So Sanjay ji, and with
condescending.
No. She was asking that these 5 people, who they are, these self-appointed people, do they have the ratification and the backing of a larger group of people, academia in the country? Do they really represent Bharat? That's what she was making. And Lavanya ji is a very, very respected intellectual and a thinking person. A thinking person, Sanjay ji. No.
They can ask what is her.
No, that is exactly what I'm trying to say, sir. That Professor Lavanya Vemsani has far greater credibility than a lot of others who brand themselves and portray themselves, present themselves as intellectuals.
Anyway,
so with due respect to everybody else, and with respect to Sanju Verma ji, there is that's the ajibaji between me and her. There is no offense taken. It's all part of the debate, so it's all right there. Lavanya ji, I'm way over time, so I'm going to give you some more time to respond, please. One minute, I'll come to the end, but let Lavanya ji speak. Yeah.
Thank you. Every time we raise some interesting point or some interesting issue with any research or with any entrenched academic notion, instead of answering the point, they start attacking us. And you have seen it right here. I have been called names, and Professor Babonas has seen the efforts to cancel me. So this happens. I'm not asking, their personal details. I'm asking the data on who collected this, who did this, where they collected this, how much of the population participated in this,
exactly.
The nature of the survey. I'm questioning the nature of the survey and nature of how this is done. It is subjective, as Professor Babonas has said. A person might express different view. A person living in an urban center might have a different view than a person living in a rural place. And a person living in northern India might have a different view than a person living in southern India. I come from southern India, where non-BJP. It's the most non-BJP ruled states. And I actually come from Telangana, which had an opposition ruled state for a long time, and recent elections are actually won by Congress party. One of the main oppositions that Mr. Jha was indicating.
Right.
So, electoral democracy is well and alive, even though they might say it differently. But the VDEM democracy report doesn't give the data that is necessary to
Correct.
Understand how this is done.
True, because
So,
net it is supposed to be scholarly work. It's not.
Right.
It's not a political musing. It's not. It's not a YouTube live or a setup of your opinion, of an editorial or a thought of opinion. It's supposed to be scholarly work, and scholarly work has to be backed by robust data. Every assumption that's made, every inference made has to be backed by robust data, and that data is missing. A lot of hyperbole
Right.
is present. Data is missing.
Right.
I have to wind up. The 10 seconds is due. So Sanju Verma ji,
Anand.
for the next debate.
Co-powered by
registration office and say that I don't want to go back to my country because I fear persecution. Now, under the new rules, even that FRRO slip whereby you have communicated and FRRO has acknowledged your communication, even that is being accepted by Government of India. And because based on that FRRO slip, you were given a long-term visa. So the process of documentation is already there. Some people, because they've been in India for so long, have gotten their children admitted into schools. In the school admission form, their country of origin is mentioned as Pakistan, Bangladesh or Afghanistan. They've got their Aadhaar cards based on their long-term visa. Those Aadhaar cards have been linked to bank account, bank documents. All of these are acceptable documents now. So for this group which came to India before 2014, life will be much simpler. It will be much easier. But they hope and they feel that there are many in these colonies, refugee camps of Jaisalmer, refugee camps of Majnu Katila. The exodus from these countries continue. From these three countries, people have come in 2016, 20, 22, and people I spoke to, those who are benefiting from the new CAA rules, say that we will definitely pray that this day comes in the lives of our other brethren as well. But of course, Indian government will have to take a call. For now, people who came before 2014 December can avail of Indian citizenship under the new Citizenship Amendment Act rules. Citizenship Amendment Act rules have finally been framed and notified. This means that people from Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh who came to India before December 2014 and who want to now be called Indian citizens, they now know how to go about the process. There is a portal that is being notified by the Ministry of Home Affairs, which means the entire job application process will happen online. On this application form, they will have to swear allegiance to Indian Constitution, to India and its people. There are other formats also available. So with the application, they will have to specify where they came from, the country of origin, the religion that they follow. As far as documentation is required, the Schedule IA that has been mentioned, Schedule 1A, which has been mentioned as part of the Gazette notification, says that two sets of documents are required. One, to prove your nationality, and second, to prove that you came to India before the cutoff date of December 2014. So what can these documents be? As far as the documentation to prove your nationality is concerned, passport from your original country, some kind of a birth certificate from your original country, or any government document from your country of origin, which is Bangladesh, Afghanistan or Pakistan, is acceptable. Now one might ask that if these are persecuted minorities, if they have fled from their country, how is it that they will have these documents? So one has to understand that this is a situation where we are talking of people who have been in India for the last 10 years, at least, because 2014, like I said, is the cutoff date. When they came to India, most of them came on long-term visa. For example, I spoke to some people who are in Rajasthan, who fled from Pakistan, but they came to India on the pilgrimage visa. Similar instances are found in Majnu Katila area of Delhi as well. So these are people who took a 7-day visa or a 15-day visa saying that we want to do Kumbh Mela or we want to visit places of pilgrimage. So when they came and they got that visa, they had their passport and they had their visa stamped as well. There is no renewal for passport that these people required, because within 1 month of coming to India, as per existing norms, they had to go to the local FRRO, the Foreigners Registration Office, and say that I don't want to go back to my country because I fear persecution. Now, under the new rules, even that FRRO slip whereby you have communicated and FRRO has acknowledged your communication, even that is being accepted by Government of India. And because based on that FRRO slip, you were given a long-term visa. So the process of documentation is already there. Some people, because they've been in India for so long, have gotten their children admitted into schools. In the school admission form, their country of origin is mentioned as Pakistan, Bangladesh or Afghanistan. They've got their Aadhaar cards based on their long-term visa. Those Aadhaar cards have been linked to bank account, bank documents. All of these are acceptable documents now. So for this group which came to India before 2014, life will be much simpler. It will be much easier. But they hope and they feel that there are many in these colonies, refugee camps of Jaisalmer, refugee camps of Majnu Ka Tila. The exodus from these countries continue. From these three countries, people have come in 2016, 20, 22, and people I spoke to, those who are benefiting from the new CAA rules, say that we will definitely pray that this day comes in the lives of our other brethren as well. But of course, Indian government will have to take a call. For now, people who came before 2014 December can avail of Indian citizenship under the new Citizenship Amendment Act rules. Citizenship Amendment Act rules have finally been framed and notified. This means that people from Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh who came to India before December 2014 and who want to now be called Indian citizens, they now know how to go about the process. There is a portal that is being notified by the Ministry of Home Affairs, which means the entire job application process will happen online. On this application form, they will have to swear allegiance to Indian Constitution, to India and its people. There are other formats also available. So with the application, they will have to specify where they came from, the country of origin, the religion that they follow. As far as documentation is required, the Schedule IA that has been mentioned, Schedule 1A, which has been mentioned as part of the Gazette notification, says that two sets of documents are required. One, to prove your nationality, and second, to prove that you came to India before the cutoff date of December 2014. So what can these documents be? As far as the documentation to prove your nationality is concerned, passport from your original country, some kind of a birth certificate from your original country, or any government document from your country of origin, which is Bangladesh, Afghanistan or Pakistan, is acceptable. Now one might ask that if these are persecuted minorities, if they have fled from their country, how is it that they will have these documents? So one has to understand that this is a situation where we are talking of people who have been in India for the last 10 years, at least, because 2014, like I said, is the cutoff date. When they came to India, most of them came on long-term visa. For example, I spoke to some people who are in Rajasthan, who fled from Pakistan, but they came to India on the pilgrimage visa. Similar instances are found in Majnu Ka Tila area of Delhi as well. So these are people who took a 7-day visa or a 15-day visa saying that we want to do Kumbh Mela or we want to visit places of pilgrimage. So when they came and they got that visa, they had their passport and they had their visa stamped as well. There is no renewal for passport that these people required, because within 1 month of coming to India, as per existing norms, they had to go to the local FRRO, the Foreigners Registration Office, and say that I don't want to go back to my country because I fear persecution. Now, under the new rules, even that FRRO slip whereby you have communicated and FRRO has acknowledged your communication, even that is being accepted by Government of India. And because based on that FRRO slip, you were given a long-term visa. So the process of documentation is already there. Some people, because they've been in India for so long, have gotten their children admitted into schools. In the school admission form, their country of origin is mentioned as Pakistan, Bangladesh or Afghanistan. They've got their Aadhaar cards based on their long-term visa. Those Aadhaar cards have been linked to bank account, bank documents. All of these are acceptable documents now. So for this group which came to India before 2014, life will be much simpler. It will be much easier. But they hope and they feel that there are many in these colonies, refugee camps of Jaisalmer, refugee camps of Majnu Ka Tila. The exodus from these countries continue. From these three countries, people have come in 2016, 20, 22 and
It's another story that must be told, ladies and gentlemen. Every time we have a fight at our borders, we always look at and remember and think of our martyrs. Oftentimes, we don't look within. We have lost more soldiers in our internal security issues, fighting within our borders over the last many decades. And that body count is huge. And that body count was because of Red Terror. Here comes another movie from those people who seem to have made it a business of making movies nobody else would make. And perhaps in that manner, they've also become perhaps a trinity, if I may say, an actor, a filmmaker, a director, and of course the producer. So all of them coming together. And every time they pick up subjects, that push the entire, barrier, if I may say, or push the line and go to that place where normally filmmakers would not want to trudge upon. So it's great to have them back here at CNN News 18, but in our new studios, in our new facilities, exactly about 9 months down the line. So Dipto Sen, Ada Sharma and Vipul Shah, Namaste, Jai Hind, thank you very much. And this time around, wow, that look is fantastic, Ada. and you look from Kerala stories to now we're talking Bastar, and in between a commando. You've really decided that I want to become the true hunter wali of this age.
Why not? But they're all different kinds of action. I think Commando is more of that larger than life superhero space. This is very realistic and hard hitting. But I enjoy action, all kinds. This is really real, like realistic.
So let me ask you, from Kerala to moving to these areas of red terror, that is Bastar, Dantewada, so this Chhattisgarh, Marathwada, that region altogether, how different was this subject?
Well, in Kerala, in Kerala I'm playing a victim, and in this I'm a warrior, I'm a savior, I'm leading war. So it was really cool, I think, of Vipul sir and Sudipto sir to cast me, the same person who in their previous film was a victim who was petrified, scared. I'm this innocent college girl who doesn't know what's happening with her. Here I'm in charge, I'm giving people commands and getting things done, and I really enjoyed it. For an actor,
it's a totally different body language.
Yes, totally.
It's a totally different body language.
Yes.
But then what for you was the essence of the story?
Again, it's like putting a truth forward, and with the Kerala story I realized there is an audience who likes to watch stories like this. I mean, it was the whole country. If it had so many people watching it, and the whole it released on OTT 9 months after the release in theatres, and it still was #1 on the OTT platform when it released, and it broke all those records even on OTT. So I just thought that I'd owe it to that audience to give them another film, and I don't want to repeat the same thing and do the same role again. It's so nice to be someone else, different body language, different body also, different face, another person, and another very important story to tell. It's also a story about our country that I didn't know has happened, because we live in cities and it's not happening to us in our city here.
So you didn't know about it?
I didn't know about it, no. I didn't know. I have friends also and we were like, Bastar, what is Bastar? Like Bastar. Naxal, you've heard of Naxalites and everything, that we know. But I didn't know all about this. And I guess when I get into a project, then I obsessively read about it and learn about it. And
so when you read about it, what did you think?
I think it's terrifying. There are so many incidents happening, like the tribal woman in our movie. Her husband was cut up into pieces because he hoisted the Indian flag at a school function. Just for hoisting your flag in your own country, you're chopped up into pieces in front of his child and the mother. Sudipto sir met the actual woman and he has a video of her, and also stories like that. And these people are oppressed by a system that is corrupt and very, very, very powerful. So even over here we are fighting against people who are so powerful, and there's such an imbalance in the power, such an imbalance in things. So I thought it's a story that's nice that we can give a voice to.
Now to the person who dives into the research, let me ask you, the story reference of 76 CRPF personnel goes back to 2010. We are in 2024. That red terror corridor is shrinking. What's the point of making the movie today?
See, I started the whole ideology, that imported ideology called communism, which has come from China and Russia. These imported ideology started, that is the armed struggle part started in 1967 in Naxalbari, And I was born in 1968, just next to Naxalbari place called Jalpaiguri. So I grew up along with the evolution of the revolutionary peasant movement or the armed struggle part of Maoist movement. So I saw this movement, really building up, getting the foundation in this country. In 2005, a very interesting happened that against this leftist terror, first time a people's movement were built up. The local tribal who were dejected, frustrated with this continuous terror and atrocities of the Maoists, they decided to come together and make a tribal way of protesting called Salva Judum, which means peace march. So I discussed with Bipulji when we decided to make a film, and we collectively decided that this is the phase which is not only important for Bastar but also important for Indian history, Indian politics, Indian sociology, where first time tribals stood against this Maoist terror, and they failed, though they failed, but they left a important milestone for our history. So we picked up that phase and made this film.
Now, very interesting part that he said that there are urban intellectuals who are actually funding this and who are actually fueling this. So, aren't you worried those urban intellectuals will come after you, because those urban intellectuals still exist?
They do. And they are more dangerous actually, in my opinion, than the actually gun wielding Naxals, because they are bright minds and sitting in the cities using the legal loopholes and the constitutional protections that is available to them. They are actually sitting in our society and trying to break our country, change the entire democratic setup. They want a one party, single party dictatorship to be employed in India as a political dispensation, and that to me is an extremely worrying point, because we can agree that democracy always has its own problem. Nothing is ever 100% perfect in democracy, but that's still better than the idea of a single party dictatorship. In the research, what I read, see, 76 Jawans were martyred, we all know. JNU celebrated on that particular occasion, we all know. But in the research, I read an article where a 4-month-old baby was hit with an iron rod and killed. Yeah. I read something to the effect of 8 babies were snatched from their mothers and thrown into the burning fire and burnt alive. Then there are multiple episodes of 52 Jawan being martyred, 36 Jawan being martyred, 10 policemen, 8 it's like relentless violence. The NHRC report says that in Bastar, in last 50 years, approximately 55,000 people have been killed. And that number for Kashmir from 1952 till date is 47,000. But Kashmir was part of the national narrative and international narrative for 3 decades, but nobody talks about Bastar. So when I came to know about this entire thing, when I read it and I went into a deep dive it, we went to Bastar, we met people. And I met 2 girls who have converted from Naxal. They surrendered and now they are working for the cops. Dantewada force, Danteshwari force. They work for them. So I asked them that if you, and they are the girls, there was a prize money of 5 lakhs on their head because they had actually killed people. So I said, why, what made you change? Why did you come back on this side? They said, after a point, even we could not deal with the kind of brutality that they are operating with.
Did you go to Bastar too?
Yes, I went there and I was fortunate enough to meet the girls who are in the force. I was fortunate enough to go with them into the jungles to see how they train, to be with them and train with them. They told me their stories as well. They carry those heavy backpacks with all the food and everything, that's 8 kilos. Then they put their ammunition here and in between the shoes, and you have to walk really silently even with all that heavy stuff on you, because if you make any noise, crunching of leaves, anyone from anywhere can hear you and you'll be shot. So you have to do all that, but really silently, and sometimes days in the forest, in the jungles, inside without food, water, loo, there's no loo available to you at your so things like that when they shared with me. And we met a girl who was 7 months pregnant and who didn't tell anyone she was 7 months pregnant, so that she could continue doing her duty because she was so committed to it.
When you spoke to these girls, why did they do what they did before they turned over?
The two girls.
The two girls before they turned over.
Yeah, before they turned over.
Because
why did they do what they did?
Because they were promised stuff that they weren't given. They were promised security. They were promised money. They were promised safety. They were promised that someone will do something for them and come on this side because that's the right thing to do. But I mean, fake promises and false promises. And then there was so much violence, so they said that they couldn't see that violence anymore, so they came to this side, even though they know that they'll be hunted down by the other side someday, right? Because
But I'm just asking you, somebody had to fuel this system, no? Fund this system. If this system still operates, somebody is bringing in the money and somebody is patronizing.
No. That's a very interesting question you did. Actually, money is being produced there.
Okay.
You perhaps you know that that Abujamar forest produce more than 8,000 crore worth of tendupatta, which is the which 40% Indian smoke. That out of that 8,000, approximately 17 to 18% of the levy remain with the Maoists there.
Okay.
And that forest, that Abujamar forest has 8 mountains, which is called Bailadila, which is the highest reserve of iron ore in entire Asia. Even we feed Japan and China with our iron ore. Then it has the most precious stones in the mines. When one urban sympathizer of the Maoist been arrested, who is a Delhi University professor, been arrested, within 1 hour, 21 head of the states from Europe to Africa, they are writing letters that Indian human rights situation is at stake. India is the dark spot of the human rights, and our president does not know what to do. So that lady was being given, not taken to the court, and she has been given bail. So these money used to run the whole network of the, and that is the reason our urban intellectuals are so much interested in Bastar. Just imagine, from Bastar, 100 kilometer, there is another forest called Jhabua. Bastar has 82% tribal population. Jhabua has 100% tribal population. Maoists are not there. Maoists are here. From Delhi, 200 kilometer. Above Rishikesh, there is 100% tribal colonies there. There is no Maoist because there is no tendupatta. There is no iron ore.
The projection or the narrative that has been built is that these are poor people who are fighting against injustice.
Correct.
Now these poor people get the best weapons in the world. How? From where? Where does the money come from? And how are they able to procure so many AK-47s and AK-56 and all kind of guns? They have satellite communication systems. They have got every terrific modern day equipment. How? If they are so poor, who are actually fighting a feudal system that is India, then how are they getting all these things? They are not easy. I mean, if you and me want to get a gun today in India, is it possible? No, but they have it like in abundance.
Let me ask you this. After you did all your research, then did you think twice, do I really want to do this?
No, I was very sure. I was very sure I want to be part of a film that, speaks the truth and things that we didn't know about in our own country. I love my country, and I'm sure there are so many people who came and watched Kerala Story and openly spoke about how much they loved it and openly spoke about how they want to protect our country.
No, but did you get a sense that you're being ignored, you're being set aside? No, let's not call the Kerala Story people. Let me ask you.
No, this is a big mystery to me, that when so there was this very interesting poll that was conducted on internet, where she got 76% saying the best
really
performance, best performance of the year. 76% of the people thought that she should she's the one and she should get all the awards. But the mystery is that Kerala Story doesn't get a single nomination in any awards. Why?
You may not want to get awards. You may say, all right, I don't want that.
No, to be honest, I love awards and all. I think validation is great from every place, from the audience first, because you're making the movie for the audience, and from the industry, from everyone. Everyone is people finally, right? You're making the movie for people. I don't select when I make a movie and say it's only for those 3 people, they're not for him. I don't discriminate. I'm very equal to all. My movie is for everybody who wants to see it.
But you get the feeling that you've been discriminated against.
No, let me tell you one thing. We all know awards have lost their credibility 20 years back. I mean, there is no mystery that these awards are really, I mean, they are just a television event.
Yeah, but then if you get a nomination, you will still celebrate it, right? You may say you...
No, I have stopped going to award functions for last 15 years.
But if they said Kerala Story is getting an award, will you say, I don't want it? No, you will want it.
I have been nominated many times and I have not gone. And then when on the day of the award, that nomination changes to something else. So that's fine. I have no problem. Even Amir Khan has stopped going to the award function. He's said it openly, and many more people have said it openly that these awards have lost their credibility because they are all just made for TV events. There is nothing credible left about these awards.
Do you people look at each other and say, are we going to be the only guys making movies with each other?
Not really. Not really.
No,
My
I'm
next
very
film is
sure.
not with Vipul Shah. Vipul Shah's next film is not with me.
And I just did Sunflower Season 2, which released 2 weeks back, which wasn't with them.
So it's not that there is no work or people are not taking you on because you're doing subjects like this, because
See,
you're making movies like this.
Vipul sir, I think you consecutively did 4 films with Akshay Kumar.
No, 7.
7 films. So nobody has that time.
I am a very democratic person, and I believe the lobby also has a democratic right to not work with us. I can't hold grudges against them for not working with me because I am making a certain kind of film.
Correct.
That is their democratic right.
When you're saying stories that actually matter, these are stories that matter, then why should certain people say, we don't want to share stage with that person, we don't want to share screen space with that person, or we don't want, but really, do we really need to? I'm just saying, does that irk you? Does that hurt you? Do you think that's the wrong attitude?
There is a fear in their heart about, people in film industry make, if I will be seen like this, my brand will get affected like this, blah, blah, blah.
Let me ask you this final question, coming back to the movie. You're essaying a character as an officer who's looking at the home minister in that scene and saying, let's both of us walk without anybody on the streets of Bastar in a village and let's see who survives. That takes some gumption. What is that character and who are you playing in this movie? Who's that character?
I'm playing Neerja Madhavan. She's brave and fearless and very aspirational. She's someone who I think I would look up to and want to have even half the kind of fearlessness that she has.
But she's a fictional character? Based on factual...
She's based on a few people, to be honest, who I could meet, some who I could read about, some who... like a few of those girls who I met also say
so it's an amalgamation of...
It is, of a few people. And there's an incident that's happened where our 76 Jawans were butchered, where she was desperate and she was begging for backup when she knew something's going to happen, and the Home Minister refused because he said it's night time and I can't today, or after 2 days or so. And she was desperately calling them up and she was unable to save the 76 Jawans, and she's really frustrated and very angry. And like I said, she's someone who's fighting against a whole corrupt system, an entire ecosystem being against her, and it's just her fighting against them. She's really frustrated. Now she has nothing to lose. It's almost at that point, you're sometimes fearful to say things because you think maybe I could lose something, I could mess up. But when you've lost everything and you have only more to lose and nothing to gain, so it's a scene that comes then. It's a long...
So it's a point of no return, and that's when you're tired, you're back to the wall, and then you just want to claw your way out of it?
She's not clawing her way out. For her, it's every time she loses, she comes back with more power, and every time she loses again, and the opposition is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Usually in a film you see when someone's fighting, your hero and your main person fighting, starts getting a little... Here she gets weaker, and because the opposition is getting stronger and those people are given more arms, and the poor people, the tribals are, there are more atrocities committed towards them. So she's frustrated and very...
Okay, final question. How much of what you've shown is real even today?
100%, sir.
Almost everything. I mean, if you read last 20 days newspaper in Bastar, there have been 4 Jawans were martyred.
Yeah.
1 police officer was killed right outside the police station in broad daylight. 3 BJP politicians were hacked. One of them was hacked with an axe, cut into pieces. That's real story now. And I'm not talking about any political party. I'm just giving you information that I've read, and we keep talking about it on a daily basis. So the violence in Bastar is non-stop and relentless, even today, as we speak. I mean, imagine 10, 12 people have been killed in last 15, 20 days.
15, 20 days. 55,000 in the last 5 decades.
So that is just not stopping.
Right.
That needs to stop. That's the point.
So that's the message of this movie, Bastar. And for those who didn't know, some of the stories that have been shared, the realities of Bastar. Everybody is looking at the spotlight in one direction, whereas something else far more drastic and far more diabolical is happening right in our own backyard, ladies and gentlemen. Think about it. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you so much.
Hello and welcome to Brass Tacks. In what has been a dramatic day in Haryana, Manohar Lal Khattar, the incumbent chief minister who's been in that post for the better part of more than 9 years now, in a dramatic fashion today tendered his resignation. And that too, just 6 months before the Vidhan Sabha election, before the state is due to go to polls. In his place, Naib Singh Saini, who is the BJP MP from Kurukshetra, also the state party president of the BJP, he has now been appointed as the new chief minister. A large number of the members of the cabinet have been re-inducted into the cabinet. One critical change that has happened is the alliance between the BJP and the JJP, which is Dushyant Chautala's party, that has snapped. Now, apparently, there is a lot of speculation doing the rounds, but apparently the reason why it snapped was because the JJP was insistent that they be given at least 2 Lok Sabha seats to fight in the upcoming election. That was not to be, and that's